The moment we get in too much of the head and we're actually using what's the conscious part of the brain, nothing goes to the subconscious. Nothing. So I feel like today's video is going to kind of feel, I can sense it, like there's a struggle inside that wants to be honest, but a lot of it is coming from this pull that I want to make changes, but it's like the route that I've taken, that I've been in, you know, you kind of question sometimes, you like going, where am I going, you know, all those things. I mean, I've gone through this already, but I've never taken it this seriously, where it's like, seriously as in, when I say seriously, I don't mean like serious, I mean like an honest look at where I've come from, where I've been, and where I'm supposed to be headed, you know. But the thing is, it's all in the present moment, really, right? All I can do is acknowledge that there's a part of me that is struggling, kind of, in a way you can say that it's the ego struggling to make sense of what was with what is and what will be. You know, because a lot of us, I think, are going through that process of like, where are we headed? Where are we headed? What are we going to do? Kind of thing. And pretty sure a lot of people are asking that question, like, what's going on? This is feeling, you know, especially with the shifts going on, a lot of it is feeling kind of uncertain. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab a marcasite. Marcasite apparently is to help with transitions or something. To be honest, when I hold stones, I don't really sense it, but I have this sort of like, I don't know what it is. It's not really a sense. It's not a feeling. It's just like, some things feel heavier, some things feel lighter. Like if I hold this rhodonite, the density of it makes sense to me. It's usually more active, like it's activated throughout, like when I'm dreaming. Anyways, I digress. So the point I'm making is, sometimes there are things that you would kind of just question. One of the things I tend to still question is, where do I draw the line between honesty and honesty with myself? And in today's video, I wanted to kind of just bring up the whole thing we have with, like, it's a thing of mine that I feel like I'm not trying to push anything. It's not an agenda. I'm really just wanting to express things and I'm going through a validation process, childhood, all that stuff. And people might think it's like, oh, poor you, you're the only one. No, it's not that. It's really validating the inner child. And one of them things is connected to why I did what I did with language. I got into languages. And I'm just going to show you. I don't think this is going to make a difference. I really don't care. Because my, what is this one here? One second, sorry. Sorry, I am looking at... Here we go. So here's my credentials. Not that it matters. I have an arts degree and I also have a Bachelor of Education degree. Called validation. I feel though that those didn't make a difference in terms of where I've been going. Like I've been in university for 9 years. I was in university for 9 years, and I could have gone a different way, but there must have been a reason for it. But one of the things I noticed is that I think it's gotten me to figure out at least how I'm supposed to communicate with others. One of them is definitely this whole calming down a lot more, because when I get tense with my communication, and you'll know this for those who are in astrology, you look at Mercury. Mercury rules the arms here. If you ever get tense while you're communicating, feel your arms. Are they going up? Your shoulders, are they going up? Are they going down? If it feels tense and you breathe through it and you feel like, oh, I'm relaxed, but if you just relax for a bit even more and breathe through it and just, in a meditative state, you'll notice how it's actually even tighter than it was, instead of completely that surrender mode. Surrender. So I feel that quite often I'm becoming a lot more aware than before. So, but when it comes to things like languages, I get kind of tight with it. I can feel it, because there's this part of me that wants to be honest with it. I have Mercury in Uranus, so many asteroids, so many planets in Scorpio. This pull, and it pulls at, if you look at the drawing in my chart, it pulls at Chiron, and it literally pulls at it. So what happens is it really gets me. Sometimes I don't know what to say. It creates a limit. And in Chiron, I have it in Taurus. Taurus rules this area of the head, the face, the eyes, the nose. Literally, it gets kind of clogged up. And Scorpio wants to pull at it because it wants to change and transform. Taurus isn't like that. Taurus is relaxed, calm, at ease. It likes that. It's very Venus. So I'm trying to balance all these things. I think I should focus a lot more on the earth stuff. And I feel like that's what's going to help things. It's the intense Aquarius and Scorpio energies that I have that it's been kind of pulling at me too much. A lot of water and air in my chart. And so when it comes to things that I get passionate about, because it ties in with my placement Mercury Uranus in the 4th house. And those are kind of when I didn't get validated for efforts, or rather emotions did not get acknowledged. A lot of cold-heartedness in the home. You got that Scorpio, right? Leo and Taurus. I have this grand fixed thing between at least the 4 signs, several planets. That in itself is stating, especially with the pull at Chiron, it's like this intense, it really gets affected. Right here, I can feel it tighten up, and I feel like I need to, the jaws here go it wants to expand so much so, it's just, there's this push. Rather than the calm, inspired fire with Leo, which is in my North Node and a bunch of things, and with the Chiron in Taurus, which is Earth, I want to just slow down. Slow down. Those are the kind of things I wanted to share today, specifically when it comes to languages that somehow I need to find a way to listen to that calming effect, because otherwise it's just going to go. it's kind of like trying to it's like kind of like tearing your body apart. And I feel that there's this thing right here. It's that's why sometimes you'll see me going like this, like that. That's because I'm trying to this right here is the hearing stuff. I also realized today I have Chiron. I actually have Desdemona, one of the asteroids, and I did my research on her. And it's crazy. I'm going to actually show it to you. Here's, let me see what we have here. Okay, so let's see what we have. Let's just do that. So I'm going to do control find, Desdemona. So I noticed that based on the story, that's really what it is, right? When I do my research on asteroids, I do the story first. Now that's what I've been focusing on. The story first, or the myth, or the legend, whatever it is. And then kind of figure out what each area kind of symbolize. So for example, see, I do this based on as per myth or story. I should actually change that to or story. And what happens is that's how I get those meanings. Like naivete is that one of them, certainty of heart's desire. So basically I'm kind of like doing my research on the story, and then from there I go into associations. This term associations I got from Judy Hall's Bible book. I use that as kind of like the general keywords for that. To me, this associations thing is like the keywords to define this asteroid, what it's used for, what it represents. And it actually ties in directly with what I've been experiencing, at least because just in my first house, like one of them is definitely like this thing, not just the lost thing, but like when I was a kid, I have a cleft lip here, and that's Taurus, right? It's face here, but because it's square my Chiron, I have Desdemona square Chiron. It explains that, and it's Desdemona is conjunct my North nodes, so I'm learning to deal with. I mean, I'm okay with it. I mean, I was just born with it. It never came to my attention that it's like, oh, it's a problem, but probably. And I've been accused of many things in the past, where I felt like I'm just doing my best. I'm just being honest. I'm just doing this. And yeah, and she's the black sheep. Desdemona is considered the black sheep. She's like the rebel. She's also the scapegoat, misunderstood. She's like, she was called by her father a whore. Isn't like, what, if that's not trauma, I don't know what it is. Like, I mean, who does that? But the point is, that's what it is. So, yeah. So if you have Desdemona, you look up Desdemona, that's what it is. It also represents many, 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 many things. Criminals, basically handkerchiefs as well. There's a story about the handkerchief. It represents something. Sometimes I add on things to these asteroids. So the point is that I'm making is that when I do these things, as I do my research, as I go through this whole thing called life and learning from myself and all those things. Because asteroids is a tool, right? Astrology is a tool. It's a tool for getting to know yourself. It's a good tool for working with life. Not necessarily to rely on and, it's like that's what's going to dictate and determine what my life path is. No, we all determine that. So, how this ties into what I wanted really am talking about with myself is that sometimes I get into these modes of like intensity. It's really intensity. It's that Scorpio energy, right? I can feel it right now. But I feel like I also have to say something. And I think the Chiron thing there is telling me to kind of carry all of that energy, that intensity with like fucking like, I think there's like about at least 10 asteroids, literally planets and asteroids, dwarf planets, all that stuff, fucking pulling at Chiron. Like there's only a few asteroids, like there's like Tolkien is an asteroid, yeah, J.R. Tolkien. Moskva is also an asteroid, and there's a bunch of ones called Michael, because I've met Michaels in my life. I read that Michaels, if you see a name, there's sort of ties in with the names of the people that you'll come across, whether it's family or otherwise. But basically the pull at Chiron means that Chiron is a wounded healer, right? So it's starting to make more sense where it's like, even though there's this imbalance, it's working with that imbalance. Kind of like walking with one leg. There's that imbalance. But how do you heal from that? Well, you don't heal from it. That's the whole thing. You heal by integrating it into your life, accepting it. That's one of the things I'm accepting. And the other things that I'm accepting, which is now going to be what I really wanted to talk about, is what I took notes on here. I call it the communicational responsibility, or rather in Teal Swan's words, response ability. So I've always had this sort of like, and I don't care if whoever validates this or not, I'm not here looking for actual validation. I get to validate with it myself. Whether you hear me out or not, that's up to you. The point is that I'm making it this one of the things I'm going to keep doing, whether it's inconsistent or consistent, doesn't matter. For me, it doesn't matter. Is the whole like, there's still people out there who actually don't realize that they suffer from lack of communication. When I say lack of communication, I don't mean that they don't know how to communicate. Everyone does actually on some level. Communication is not words. Communication is not the sentences and the structure and all that stuff. This all has to do with people still label as, it's like what they do the same thing with astrology. It could be astronomy, it could be science. They're using the tool as a way to dictate their own opinions and their own, inner knowing of what to say, what to do. Instead of trusting the inner part, which is like the opposite, which is like, it's not opposite, it's like using that, that inner fucking energy that just like, okay, this is my truth, I'm going to stand for it. This is what Desdemona is exactly what was showing in my chart today. I was like, fucking, it's like what, it's in like, what's considered like what you call perfect aspect, or conjunction to my North Node. I'm supposed to stand my ground. That's also Vesta. Standing in your ground is Vesta. Vesta, restando. Apparently, so that's the history of it. So that comes to, so it's like, really learning to do that. And that's what I've been learning to do. So I'm standing my ground when it comes to my own personal desires and wants for, I just want things to be natural. Sometimes I don't even want to communicate. I don't even want to communicate. I just want to use the gift of speech, use this thing called language, and just relate with others. But at the same time also looking at the structure that's already been placed and seeing, okay, that's why I like my work. Because at least, even though ironically I do still where I work, it's not my career, it's just work. And I'm actually still there teaching, like, there's grammar stuff as well. I don't believe in that. So why do I do it? Because I explained in an older video, I said, what I desire for where I'm headed is more important than my egoic need to be right. I've come to this point in time, or this life, where it's like people do what they want. But when it comes to my thing, even though, and this is where this is the thing, I don't know if it's catch-22 or whatever, but whatever the term is, it's a whole being, one, being misunderstood, number two, not being heard, and number three, kind of not, well, not kind of, not being validated for allowing for just, I have this opinion, but people still believe that when someone has an opinion, it's almost like they need to accept it, that that's their opinion. But it's like, that's not how physicality works. There's a reason why we're on different paths, same source, because the opinion is something that stems from a belief system. This belief system that we all have is supposed to come together and bring the pieces together in that fucking puzzle called existence, called being. But we can't do it if we're always like trying to fight each other, going, nah, you're wrong, no. The reason why people get pissed off is because they just want to be validated, really. Starting to realize this now, it's like going through Teal Swan stuff. Thank you, Teal Swan. Love it. Going back to that real deeper shadow work, which is like, okay. But I still need to go through more of the other stuff. Like there's this thing called she has this thing she called the completion process. And I know about those cockamamie, anti-teal, whatever, anti-real, hiding behind the shadows, and like that's the thing, right? When you go egoic on someone who's just trying to make a change, who's a revolutionary figure, yeah, you're bound to come across people like those, right? They're not necessarily idiots, but the fact that people get into this state of like succumbing to, well, first of all, if they're unconscious, it's not about bad or good, it's just the fact that, well, that's what it is. They're being idiotic. Their true essence is not idiotic, there's no such thing. But this reality states that, yeah, because it's unconscious, that's all it is. Unconscious is nothing but it's like a forgetfulness. It's a amnesia of wholeness. So this is why we question things, like we question and say give advice right away. We have an opinion to say it. It's like personally for me, if I'm saying something, I'm learning to also being acknowledging of what people's reaction to what I say. That's when I know the person is not going to, doesn't know how to, one, doesn't know how to, or doesn't know how to yet, and number three, cannot validate things. In other words, to me, validation comes from being just present and being just, okay, this is your process, this is your path. We cannot, I say this 100 million fucking zillion eternal Google whatever timelessness, repeatedness that it is. We cannot force our own opinions on others. And when a person is saying something in an opinion, the best we can do is, okay, I hear you, acknowledge it, and then that's it. Zip it. And then if you want to say your opinion, you say, okay, so that's cool, that's your thing, it's your opinion, okay. And then making sure it's clear, because there's a lot of people who still give their advice, they say something, and it's like, this is one of the things, when someone was, an old friend was doing this, it's almost like, now it wasn't clear, see that's the thing, I wasn't I wasn't having this ability to respond in a proper way when he said, we were talking about pans. It was just something that's considered petty, but it was still real to me. And that's the thing about it, right? Your own reality is what you make it. But it also means we also have to accept the reality that we're in at any given moment. That it's like, because it needs to be embraced with presence. But if somebody else is not doing that, then we all of a sudden, one, we think that they're enemy, they're the enemy. We think that it's like they're against us. Well, of course they're not. But the thing is, because it's not being acknowledged, it's an inner child thing. But in the meantime, as we get older, we need to be surrounding ourselves with those who do validate it. Starting with ourselves. Right? And this makes total sense, because this is the thing I've been bypassing, the whole like, oh no, I can't project, it's so wrong. And it's like, it doesn't necessarily mean to need to project, but to be honest with those emotions. It's not hurting others, it's being honest. There's a difference. You're probably going to hear this again and again, either from me or someone else. The point is, it's that thing, that responsibility. And you probably have noticed that in my previous videos when I'm talking, they're quite long, because that's the point I'm making. And that's an inner child thing of mine, where it's like, if nobody listens to it, then that's, I'm not going to resist it and say like, no, that's okay, you don't have to listen to me. Well, fuck that. I want to be listened to. Who doesn't not want to be listened to? Who doesn't not want to be validated? Of course. The thing is, the better question is, does what I'm saying resonate with you? Does what another person is saying resonate with you? To be honest, I personally feel like it's not the length of the video. It's what they really want to say, and are you going to hear them? Because that's the thing, right? It's all connected. So I'm expressing those things, expressing those desires. So the other thing I wanted to relate this to again is the whole language thing. When it comes to this whole responsibility, and I'm pretty sure there are people who are going to be like, you don't make sense, I don't get you, I don't agree with you, right away, and just like, can only ask, I'm not going to force anything, that you read into what I'm trying to say, rather than, because I need to address this, I don't want to fully have to spell it out if it's beyond what I can do. Meaning, when I've done my best, if I'm being asked to, and I'm not saying people are asking this, but I feel like they get this sense, it's like, I'm not sure it's clear enough. But at the same time, I'm just like, no, actually, it's clear. Because I take my time to process things. So I'm slowing down. At least these recent times, the past few months, I've been, it's something that I continuously work on. I'm continuously working on myself. And to be honest, it's like one of those things that I find, especially in social media, this isn't just projection. I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are serving others, who are helping them. But in truth, there's a part of them that don't want it. And I'm not going to be one of those people who'll be like, oh yeah, just suck on my cock and then that's it. Or I'll suck on your cock, I'll breastfeed you, and I'll spoon feed you and give you every little fucking answer because you've become so dependent on other people to do the job for you. We don't want to hear that, right? Yeah, we don't want to hear that. So I think we are all in this together and putting the effort in. And I think that's one of the issues that I do still have, where I kind of question, like, am I actually putting the effort in myself? Or am I doing way too much than necessary? Because instinctively, for me, I've done that a lot of times. And there's a reason behind it, because one, I haven't accepted and really been present with what I'm continuously attracting. Usually it's people who are distant and nonchalant, cold-hearted. I'm attracting those less now because I know that I can be like the same way. But once I embrace that in myself even more, those things are not going to be that much of a problem. But of course, that's what life is, right? We still got what we... I mean, call it the law of fucking attraction, but I mean, this is part of the energy of the universe. With all these laws and all these things, the key is always being present with it. And I'm trying to be also present with what I've been wanting to say today. Part of that is, besides the fact that I've kind of digressed a little bit, but this is how I do things. I think that it takes a certain person to see where I'm coming from, because when I communicate, I feel like I don't communicate like most. I don't communicate like most humans do. Most humans, they want to communicate in a very linear way. I try to do that, but what I usually do is I have a linear point, and then I have these things that go out and back in, out and back in, out and back in. Because I feel like there's people who don't want to take that time. Again, this is a validation thing. This is definitely a validation because I can feel it. I can sense it. You're like, okay, they're not listening. You know what? Let's breathe into it. I accept that of myself. I accept that that's what they're doing. It's not okay with me, or it's not okay with this inner child. But everyone's on their own path. So, this other thing I wanted to talk about is the whole thing that still continues up till today with the whole again, going back to what I said earlier about the whole there are a lot of people who have issues with, or they have low self-esteem, or they feel bad that they can't communicate. I hear this a lot of times. They're like, my English isn't that good. My English is not that good. My English, right away, it's like they put themselves down because they think their English is not that good. But then the response usually to that is, oh, your English is good. But I think there's something more than that. It's not just telling people, it's like, oh yeah, communication is great. You know, I tell people all the time, as long as you're communicating. But that's usually part of the job that I do. You know, real honesty is that something needs to change. And when I say change, I mean fucking change. Okay? And I'm just saying this because I wouldn't say I'm necessarily tired, because I can control it a lot more now. When I say control it, for those who I need to spell it out for, is resentment there. You can sense that. Is the fact that when I'm... See, now I lost my train of thought. See, this is what happens when I try to stop and try to think back. There's no flow. I'm going to go backtrack a little bit and forget what I was about to say there. So there's people who still feel like I can't speak English, or my English is bad, or whatever, my language is bad. There's this automatic sort of, it's a conditioned thing to bring ourselves down. But the thing is, whether it's a fact or not, that's not the point. It's about the energy, right? But instead of going into that, again, like I was saying, something needs to fucking change. Which is this whole field of communication, this whole language community thing needs to fucking wake up. And it comes back down to one simple thing. And I'm just saying this because I want to say it adamantly. And I get quite expressive about this one. Listen to children. You want to destroy the fucking planet? Go be an adult self. Go be a destructive, unhealthy ego self. Go ahead. Prove to others you're right. Prove to others that, oh no, this being language thing, this being child thing is all like, ew, it's for children. Ew, I'm an adult. Ew, 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 ew. Really what it is resistance, right? We all resist something. The point is not we all resist something. The point is not stop resisting. The point is question why. So, like, what am I resisting and why am I resisting that? Where does that come from? At the very least, that's a healthy way of approaching things like that. So this is the thing about what I wrote down for my notes here. When we speak a language right off the bat, even if we're forced to or we choose to do that, because even if that's all we know, think this is what it is. It's like assuming and saying that I know your language, meaning I know how to speak your way of communication, like your way of trying to connect with me on your behalf, and you just shut the fuck up. That's not the intention, but that's what it's going to come out as. Because it's like, I see this all the time. It's like, okay, but that's not the intention of people. That's beside the point. But what the system has been doing unconsciously, it's not about, oh, they did something bad, they did something good. No, it's just been unconscious. It has been at the detriment, and all the stuff that's been going for the past 500 fucking 1,000 years, maybe longer, of this language learning shit, has been to make people slaves to self-disempowerment. Okay? Slaves to self-disempowerment. You're probably wondering, like, how did that happen? Yes, it is, because when you don't know what to say, what happens? There's a doubt in your head. When someone corrects you, you say, oh, and then people say this to me all the time. They're like, thank you for correcting me. Pretty sure that's not what they mean. I'm pretty sure they're like, thank you for giving me the answer. That's really what it is. It's not thank you for correcting me. Do people like being corrected? Because what is being corrected? If you think about it, like, no, don't say that. This is how you say it. Because subconsciously, we don't realize that. Because it is subconscious. We're not aware of it. But what's happening really subconsciously, I mean, for me at least, when I do it, when I get corrected, I have this sort of like, don't do that. It hurts. Don't do that. It hurts. Because you're telling me you're invalidating my mistake. You're invalidating where I am currently. But that also comes with the whole why speaking a language right away, causes more of that mistakes, because we didn't take the time to pause and observe and be still. And how does this tie in? Look up language acquisition. You'll see why children, babies, toddlers, don't speak for the first 2 years. I've heard this many times that people say, oh, that's just like a children thing. You can't do that because by the time you reach the age of like 8, your formative years, all that stuff. To be honest, I don't care because, again, there's a thing. If people were to not hear where I'm trying to get at, that's on your part. On their people, those who respond, they'll be like, that's on your part for not validating it. And that goes back because the reason hurt people, right? At the very least, this is one of those things that happen as well. If you got corrected, then what you're most likely going to do is also correct other people. Hurt people. It might not feel like you're hurting someone because you're just doing the thing, you're just giving them information. I've seen that. It's like, oh, I'm just correcting you because I'm just giving you the right information. You know how fucking disempowering that is? Because You're telling per person, this is what I'm going to do. I know the answer, you don't. That is not the way to go. When I say the way, I mean not the only way. That is not a healthy way to go. I believe, though, that the more people, the more people are going to realize that. And on a functional level, on a basic level, correction doesn't even work. Because all it's just spoon feeding the person. It's just going, here's the answer to the test, here's the answer to the equation, here it is, I'll give it to you. And then I'm going to have you memorize it, and I'm going to have you regurgitate it, look at your notes, review, memorize, regurgitate. Then what? This ties in directly actually to experience itself. Knowledge is knowledge is just knowledge. It just, when I look at my notes, for example, on astrology, when I go through those, I just use those notes. I don't try to memorize it. I go right away into using it. Now, how does this tie into a language that you're not familiar with? Well, you go back to something that's very basic. When you've already formulated this, there's this formulation that happens when you acquire your first language, right? And I know this for a fact because I was raised bilingual. When I understand my parents, when I hear them, I understand their intentions. I understand what they're trying to say. Because it's not about the words. It's not even just about communication. It's about intention. It's the energy behind it. And that in itself is attached to the meanings that were created and formulated along with the words and the concepts and all that stuff, and structure and grammar and all that stuff. And this is what leads to behavior, personality. A language has a personality. Why? Because a culture has a personality. Because we all have personalities. There's a collective personality. There's a collective behavior. But even then, on an individual basis, on an individual level, there's an individual personality, right? So that means your language that you speak with, just like your mom, is going to be slightly different from the way your mom or your father or your sister or your brother or whoever it is going to be. It's going to be slightly different. Why? Because of your personality. So, whether it makes sense, that's not the point I'm making here. So, I can only hope that you get it. Okay? So, again, so we have to go back to this. It all comes down to being present. Because presence it's expansive, it's love. When we don't do this, we don't know how to observe. We just what's the answer? What's the answer? What's the answer? What's the answer? It's like that, that tiny bird that waits for its parent to feed them. Well, those are babies. Babies do the same thing. It knows what it knows instinctively. It's to cry for help, to cry when there's pain. But those are physical things. They're not you're hurting me. It's not an egoic thing. But as we get older, we've forgotten that it's all we gotta do is be present. So this is what they say in the research is listening. It's just more than that. It's definitely more than that, because it's not just I'm doing this and I'm listening. Because I tell people it's go for stories that you love. Go for, as Stephen Krashen puts it, was it light, something that's easy, light, and something. I forgot what he said. But basically it's comfortable, right? So when we're not present, I wrote down here, we actually have this disconnection. Because what we're having is, if you look at it physically, and this is why presence is tied directly to the physical body. Because that's what it is. We started as emotional beings. T.L. Swan is right. Yes, it's emotional because it's physical first, and that's what it is, and that the emotion comes through that. But it's not these emotions that are like from these, from the fabrication of the ego, which is part of the defense mechanism. These fabrication, these stories that are in the head, but further down into it, which is more like physical feelings. Just basic stuff, but it's powerful. Fucking powerful. How the hell do you explain trauma in that you have today? This is why I love shadow work. This is why I'm glad I discovered shadow work a long time ago, because it's like, oh, I mean, on a conscious level, it's more like acknowledging it. This is why when I do my shadow work now, I'm trying to go deeper into that. And, you know, I don't know if I can really go down into the real subconscious, but I think that when we're going into that state of not just physical stillness and not just like the perceived stillness, like stillness, I mean like in it and just allowing for it. That's presence, what it is. It's being that's just allowing for it. We heal that past. But it's not disconnected from this whole process of acquisition. I don't want to call it language acquisition. The point is not about Stephen Krashen, language acquisition, language learning. It's not the point. The point is this whole absorbability, this ability to just really like just, right? This is why I keep saying childlikeness. Do what children do, especially the younger they are. It's better because they just do what they do. Do what dogs do. They're not observing for the sake of observations or observing. They're not doing anything we think they are doing. Presence is a part of it that is natural and absolutely doable, but cannot be perceived by this conscious mind. So people are probably wondering, well, then how do I learn a language? See, it goes back to that. We keep going back to the same thing. You surrender. I highly suggest look up Wim Hof method to get you started with being present, because when I did things before I got into Wim Hof method, or at least I don't think of it as that method, as if that's the only method. But when I started doing it, it got me started on this path of like, oh, okay, so that's at least part of being present. Surrendering to that moment. And this ties in with the whole like, I enjoy kids shows because of this a lot more than I used to. Before I would just be like, oh, I just have to do it. There's this feeling, I can feel the energy. It's like, oh, this, I don't know, yeah. But now it's more like, But ultimately, we're all going through our own paths. I'm merely really just expressing not only my frustrations and my need and want, but also communicating that it's like, this is the change that needs to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen through me, maybe through something else, somebody else. There are people on YouTube who are already doing it. They're calling it comprehensible input. To be honest with you, that's not completely like the best way, but at least it's a start. I'm grateful for these people actually, because they're doing something with it, right? And of course, this does not mean like, oh, don't translate. But the moment we get in too much of the head, and we're actually using what's the conscious part of the brain, nothing goes to the subconscious. Nothing. You might think you do for the first 3 days. Then you're like, oh, what was that again? Oh, I don't remember anymore. Oh, and then then the ego wants to make excuses. The unhealthy ego wants to make excuses like, oh, I'm tired today. I drank last night. I'm not in the mood. Even if I haven't heard of it, the ego wants to make excuses because it wants to be it wants to stop life. It wants to stop life because it's afraid of life. It believes it is the source of things. It believes that it's so separate. But again, that's more of an unhealthy ego. A healthy ego knows that it's separate and yet is open to surrendering back to wholeness. I've said enough. I think that's it for now. Thanks for watching. If you've come this far into the video, great. If you haven't, can't do anything about it. Again, yeah, I lean into it. That's what it is. If you have any questions, comments below, whether you disagree or agree. Yeah. Whatever might happen will happen. But I will always, from this point on, at the very least, I'm very much more aware that I need to acknowledge my needs and wants and, and heal from the past, grow through that, and then maintain presence as I move into this linear world into the future. Okay? So, at the very least, I hope that gave you some insight into like, yeah. So, see you guys later. Thank you for watching.